Nothing is seen to be in transmigration, nor does anything ever enter into nirvana.
147. As a king or a wealthy householder, giving his children various clay-made animals, pleases them and makes them play with the toys, but later gives them real ones. 148. So, I, making use of various forms and images of things, instruct my sons. But the limit of reality can only be realized within oneself.
35.
At that time Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva again said this to the Blessed One.
Pray tell me, Blessed One, about the attainment of self-realization by noble wisdom, which does not belong to the path and the usage of the philosophers.
Which is devoid of all such predicates as being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity. Which has nothing to do with the false imagination, nor with individuality and generality. Which manifests itself as the truth of highest reality. Which, going up continuously by degrees the stages of purification, enters upon the stage of Tathagatahood. Which, because of the original vows unattended by any striving, will perform its works in infinite worlds like a gem reflecting a variety of colors.
And which is manifested when one perceives how signs of individuation rise in all things as one realizes the course and realm of what is seen of mind itself.
And thereby I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are enabled to survey things from the point of view which is not hampered by marks of individuality and generality nor by anything of the false imagination, and may quickly attain supreme enlightenment and enable all beings to achieve the perfection of all their virtues. Replied the Blessed One. Well done, Mahamati. And again, well done, indeed, Mahamati. Because of your compassion for the world. For the benefit of many people. For the happiness of many people, for the welfare, benefit, happiness of many people, both of celestial beings and humankind, Mahamati, you present yourself before me and make this request. Therefore, Mahamati, listen well and truly, and reflect, for I will tell you. Assuredly, said Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this to him.
Mahamati,
since the ignorant and the simple-minded, not knowing that the world is what is seen of mind itself, cling to the multitudinousness of external objects, cling to the notions of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity, as being characterized by self-nature which rises from discrimination based on habit energy, they are addicted to false imaginings. Mahamati, it is like a mirage in which the springs are seen as if they were real. They are imagined so by the animals who, thirsty from the heat of the season, would run after them. Not knowing that the springs are their own mental hallucinations, the animals do not realize that there are no such springs. In the same way, Mahamati, the ignorant and simple-minded with their minds impressed by various erroneous speculations and discriminations since beginningless time,
with their minds burning with the fire of greed, anger, and folly,
delighted in a world of multitudinous forms, with their thoughts saturated with the ideas of birth, destruction, and subsistence, not understanding well what is meant by existent and non-existent, by inner and outer. The ignorant and simple-minded fall into the way of grasping at oneness and otherness, being and non-being. Mahamati, it is like the city of the Gandharvas which the unwitted take for a real city, though it is not so in fact. This city appears in essence owing to their attachment to the memory of a city preserved in seed from beginningless time. This city is thus neither existent nor non-existent. In the same way, Mahamati, clinging to the memory of erroneous speculations and doctrines since beginningless time, they hold fast to ideas such as oneness and otherness, being and non-being, and their thoughts are not at all clear about what is seen of mind only. Mahamati. It is like a man who, dreaming in his sleep of a country variously filled with women, men, elephants, horses, cars, pedestrians, villages, towns, hamlets, cows, buffaloes, mansions, woods, mountains, rivers, and lakes, enters into its inner apartments and is awakened. While awakened thus, he recollects the city and its inner apartments. What do you think, Mahamati? Is this person to be regarded as wise, who is recollecting the various unrealities he has seen in his dream? Said Mahamati. Indeed, he is not, Blessed One. The Blessed One continued.
In the same way, the ignorant and simple-minded who are bitten by erroneous views and are inclined toward the philosophers
do not recognize that things seen of the mind itself are like a dream, and are held fast by the notions of oneness and otherness, of being and non-being. Mahamati, it is like the painter's canvas on which there is no depression nor elevation as imagined by the ignorant. In the same way, Mahamati, there may be in the future some people brought up in the habit energy, mentality, and imagination based on the philosopher's erroneous views. Clinging to the ideas of oneness and otherness, of bothness and not bothness, they may bring themselves and others to ruin. They may declare those people nihilists who hold the doctrine of no birth apart from the alternatives of being and non-being.
They argue against cause and effect. They are followers of the wicked views whereby they are proved meritorious causes of unstained purity.
They are to be kept far away by those whose desires are for things excellent. They are those whose thoughts are entangled in the errors of self, other, and both, in the errors of imagining being and non-being, assertion and refutation, and hell will be their final refuge. Mahamati, it is like the dim-eyed ones who, seeing a hairnet, would exclaim to one another, saying, "It is wonderful! It is wonderful! Look, O honorable sirs! And the said hairnet has never been brought into existence. It is in fact neither an entity nor a non-entity, because it is seen and not seen." In the same manner, Mahamati, those whose minds are addicted to discrimination of the erroneous views as cherished by the philosophers, and who are also given up to the realistic ideas of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, will contradict the good Dharma, ending in the destruction of themselves and others. Mahamati, it is like a firebrand wheel which is no real wheel but which is imagined to be of such character by the ignorant, but not by the wise. In the same manner, Mahamati, those whose minds have fallen into the erroneous views of the philosophers will falsely imagine in the rise of all beings oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness. Mahamati, it is like those water bubbles in a rainfall which have the appearance of crystal gems, and the ignorant taking them for real crystal gems run after them. Mahamati, they are no more than water bubbles. They are not gems, nor are they not gems, because of their being so comprehended by one party and being not so comprehended by another. In the same manner,
Mahamati, those whose minds are impressed by the habit energy of the philosophical views and discriminations will regard things born as non-existent and those destroyed by causation as existent.
One further, Mahamati, by setting up the 3 forms of measure and the 5 members of a syllogism, the philosophers make the discrimination that there is a reality existing by itself, which is attained by the realization of noble wisdom, and devoid of the 2 svabhavas. This discrimination, however, is not right. The Buddhist doctrine is this.
Mahamati.
When a psychological revulsion takes place in the yogins by the transcendence of the citta,
Manas, and Vijnana, they cast off the dualistic discrimination of grasped and grasping in what is seen of mind itself, and entering the Tathagata stage attain the realization of noble wisdom. And in this there is no thought of existence and non-existence. Again, Mahamati, if there is the grasping of existence and non-existence in the realm attained by the yogins, there will be in him the grasping of an ego, a nourisher, a supreme soul, or a person.
Again, Mahamati, the teaching pointing to self-nature, individuality and generality of things, is that of the transformation Buddha and not that of the Dharmata Buddha. Again, Mahamati, such teaching is meant for the ignorant, being in conformity with their mentality, their way of thinking and viewing things.
Any establishment that favors the way of self-nature fails to reveal the truth of self-realization to be attained by noble wisdom and the blissful abode of the samadhi.
1. This whole paragraph must be independently treated. Mahamati, it is like the trees reflected in water.
They are reflections and yet are not reflections. The trees are real figures, and yet no figures.
In the same manner, Mahamati, those who are impressed by the habit energy of the philosophical views carry on the discrimination regarding oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, being and non-being, for their minds are not enlightened as regards what is seen of mind only. Mahamati, it is like a mirror reflecting all colors and images as afforded by the conditions and without discrimination.
And they are neither images nor not images, because they are seen as images and also as not images.
And, Mahamati, they are discriminated forms of what is seen of mind itself, which are known to the ignorant as images. In the same manner, Mahamati, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, are reflected images of self-mind while they appear as if real. Mahamati, it is like an echo giving the sound of a human voice, of a river, or of the wind. It is neither existent nor non-existent, because it is heard as a voice and yet as not a voice.
In the same way, Mahamati, the notions of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness are the discriminations of self-mind and habit energy.
Mahamati, it is like a mirage which in conjunction with the sun appears with its flowing waves on the earth where there are no grass, shrubs, vines, and trees. They are neither existent nor non-existent, according to the desire for them or its absence. In the same way, Mahamati, the discriminating Vijnana of the ignorant which is impressed with the habit energy of false imaginations and speculations since beginningless time, is stirred like a mirage even in the midst of reality revealed by means of noble wisdom. By the waves of birth, subsistence, and destruction, of oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, being and non-being. Mahamati, it is like Pusaka who by means of his spell makes a corpse or a wooden image throb with life though it has no power of its own. But here the ignorant cling to the non-existent imagining them to have the power of movement. In the same way,
Mahamati,
the ignorant and simple-minded committing themselves to the erroneous philosophical views are thoroughly devoted to the ideas of oneness and otherness. But their assertion is not at all well grounded. For this reason, Mahamati, in order to attain the noble reality attainable within yourself, you should cast off the discriminations leading to the notions of birth, abiding, and destruction, of oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, being and non-being. Therefore, it is said. 149. The skandhas, of which the Vijnana is the fifth, resemble the reflections of the trees in water. They are to be regarded as Maya and a dream. They are so by thought construction.
Make no discriminations. 150.
This triple world resembles a hairnet, or water in a mirage which is agitated. It is like a dream, Maya. And by thus regarding it one is emancipated. 151. Like a mirage in the springtime, the mind is found bewildered. Animals imagine water but there is no reality to it. 152. Thus the Vijnana seed is evolved and the world comes into view. The ignorant imagine it is born, just like the dim-eyed ones perceive things in the darkness. 153. Since beginningless time, the ignorant are found transmigrating through the paths, enwrapped in their attachment to existence.
As a wedge is induced by another wedge, they are led to the abandonment of their wrappage. 154.
By regarding the world as always like a magically moving corpse, or a machine, or like a dream, or a lightning, or a cloud. The triple continuation is torn asunder and one is emancipated.
155.
There is here nothing of thought construction, it is like an image in the air. When they thus understand all, there is nothing to know. 156. Here is nothing but thought construction and name. You seek in vain for individual signs. The skandhas are like a hairnet wherein discrimination goes on. 157. A world of multitudes one is a hairnet, a vision, a dream, and the city of the Gandharvas. It is a wheel made by a firebrand, a mirage. It is a non-entity, only in appearance to people. 158. Eternity and non-eternity. Oneness, 2. Bothness and not bothness as well. These are discriminated by the ignorant who are confused in mind and bound up by errors since beginningless time. 159. In a mirror, in water, in an eye, in a vessel, and on a gem, images are seen. But in him there are no images i.e. realities anywhere to take hold of. 160.
Like a mirage in the air, so is a variety of things mere appearance.
They are seen in diversity of forms, but are like a child in a barren woman's dream. One reads Sitram, instead of Sitam. 36. Further, Mahamati, the religious teaching of the Tathagatas is free from the four statements. That is, it is devoid of oneness and otherness, of bothness and not bothness, is free from being and non-being, assertion and refutation.
The religious teaching of the Tathagatas is headed by the Four Noble Truths, the 12-fold chain of origination, and the Eightfold Noble Path leading to emancipation. The religious teaching of the Tathagatas, Mahamati, is not fastened to these ideas.
Prakriti, Isvara, causelessness, spontaneity, atoms, time and self-nature. Again, Mahamati, the Tathagatas, leading beings successively forwards like the leader of a caravan, in order to purify them from the two hindrances of passion and knowledge, will establish them in the 108 statements of imagelessness and also in the characteristic distinctions of the vehicles, of the stages of bodhisattvahood, and of the constituents of enlightenment. 37. Further, Mahamati, there are four kinds of jhanas.
What are the four?
They are the jhana practiced by the ignorant, the jhana devoted to the examination of meaning, the jhana with tathata for its object, and the jhana of the Tathagatas. What is meant by the jhana practiced by the ignorant? It is the one resorted to by the yogins exercising themselves in the discipline of the Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas,
Who perceiving that there is no ego substance,
That things are characterized with individuality and generality.
That the body is a shadow and a skeleton which is transient,
full of suffering and is impure. Persistently cling to these notions which are regarded as just so and not otherwise, and who starting from them successively advance until they reach the cessation where there are no thoughts.
This is called the dhyana practiced by the ignorant.
Mahamati, what then is the dhyana devoted to the examination of meaning? It is the one practiced by those who, having gone beyond the egolessness of things, individuality and generality,
the untenability of such ideas as self,
other, and both, which are held by the philosophers, proceed to examine and follow up the meaning of the various aspects of the egolessness of things and the stages of bodhisattvahood. This is the dhyana devoted to the examination of meaning. What, Mahamati, is the dhyana with tathata for its object? When the yogins recognize that the discrimination of the two forms of egolessness is mere imagination, and that where he establishes himself in the reality of suchness there is no rising of discrimination, I call it the dhyana with tathata for its object. What, Mahamati, is the dhyana of the Tathagata? When the yogin, entering upon the stage of Tathagatahood and abiding in the triple bliss which characterizes self-realization attained by noble wisdom, devotes himself for the sake of all beings to the accomplishment of incomprehensible works, I call it the dhyana of the Tathagatas. Therefore, it is said. 161. There are the dhyana for the examination of meaning, the dhyana practiced by the ignorant, the
dhyana with tathata for its object, and the pure dhyana of the Tathagata.
162. The yogin, while in his exercise, sees the form of the sun or the moon, or something looking like a lotus, or the underworld, or various forms like sky, fire, etc. 163. All these appearances lead him to the way of the philosophers. They throw him down into the state of sravakahood, into the realm of the pratyeka Buddhas. 164. When all these are tossed aside and there is a state of imagelessness, then a condition in conformity with tathata presents itself. And the Buddhas will come together from all their countries and with their shining hands will stroke the head of this benefactor. 38. At that time Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva again said this to the Blessed One.
Thou speakest of nirvana, Blessed One.
What is meant by this term nirvana?
Replied the Blessed One.
When the self-nature and the habit energy of all the vijnanas, including the alaya, manas, and manovijnana, from which issues the habit energy of wrong speculations. When all these go through a revulsion, I and all the Buddhas declare that there is nirvana, and the way and the self-nature of this nirvana is emptiness, which is the state of reality. Further, Mahamati, nirvana is the realm of self-realization attained by noble wisdom, which is free from the discrimination of eternality and annihilation, existence and non-existence. How is it not eternality? Because it has cast off the discrimination of individuality and generality, it is not eternality. How about its not being annihilation? It is because all the wise men of the past, present, and future have attained realization. Therefore, it is not annihilation.
Again, Mahamati, the great parinirvana is neither destruction nor death. Mahamati, if the great parinirvana is death, then it will be a birth and continuation.
If it is destruction, then it will assume the character of an effect-producing deed. For this reason, Mahamati, the great parinirvana is neither destruction nor death. Neither has it anything to do with vanishing. It is the goal of the yogins.
Again, Mahamati the great parinirvana is neither abandonment nor attainment, neither is it of one meaning nor of no meaning.
This is said to be nirvana. Further, Mahamati. Nirvana conceived by the Sravakas and Pratyekabuddhas consists in recognizing individuality and generality, in escaping social intercourse, in not having a perverted view of the world, and not raising discrimination. This is their notion of nirvana. One maranam repeated here in the text is a mistake. 39. Further, Mahamati, there are two kinds of characteristic signs of self-nature. What are these two kinds?
They are the attachment to words as having self-nature, and the attachment to objects as having self-nature. The attachment to words as having self-nature, Mahamati, takes place owing to one's clinging to the habit energy of words and false imaginings since beginningless time.
And the attachment to objects as having self-nature, Mahamati, takes place from not knowing that the external world is no more than self-mind. 40.
Further, Mahamati, there are two kinds of the sustaining power which issues from the Tathagatas, who are arhats and fully enlightened ones.
And sustained by this power the bodhisattvas would prostrate themselves at their feet and ask them questions. What is this twofold power that sustains the bodhisattvas? The one is the power by which they are sustained to go through the samadhis and samapattis, while the other is the power whereby the Buddhas manifest themselves in person before the bodhisattvas and baptize them with their own hands. Then, Mahamati, sustained by the power of the Buddhas. The bodhisattva mahasattvas at their first stage will attain the bodhisattva samadhi, known as the light of Mahayana, which belongs to the bodhisattva mahasattvas. They will immediately see the Tathagatas, arhats, fully enlightened ones appearing before them personally, who come from all the different abodes in the 10 quarters of the world and who now facing the bodhisattvas will impart to them their sustaining power displayed with the body, mouth, and words. Mahamati. As is the case with Vajragarbha the bodhisattva mahasattva, and with other bodhisattva mahasattvas who are in possession of similar character and virtue.
So, Mahamati, with the bodhisattva mahasattvas at the first stage, they will attain the Tathagatas' power sustaining them in their samadhis and samapattis, by virtue of their stock of merit accumulated for 100,000 kalpa. They will, successively going up the stages and getting thoroughly acquainted with what they should do and should not do, finally reach the stage of bodhisattvahood called Dharmamegga. Here the bodhisattva mahasattva finds himself seated on a throne in the lotus palace, and surrounded by the bodhisattva mahasattvas of a similar class. A tiara decorated and ornamented with all kinds of precious stones is on his head, and his body one shines brilliantly like the moon in the yellowish gold color of the Kampaka flower. The Buddhas now come from their worlds in the 10 quarters, and with their lotus-like hands, sprinkle the forehead of the bodhisattva mahasattva who is seated on the throne in the lotus palace. The Buddhas thus give him a baptism personally by hand, as when a great king invested with supreme authority baptizes his crown prince. This bodhisattva and these bodhisattvas are said to be sustained by the Buddha's power, being thus baptized by their hands. Mahamati. This is the twofold sustaining power imparted to the bodhisattva mahasattvas, who, sustained by this twofold sustaining power, personally come into the presence of all the Buddhas. In no other way are the Tathagatas, arhats, fully enlightened ones to be interviewed. 1 according to the Chinese translations. Further, Mahamati, whatever samadhis, psychic faculties, and teachings are exhibited by the bodhisattva mahasattvas, they are sustained by the twofold sustaining power of all the Buddhas. If, Mahamati, the bodhisattva mahasattvas show their eloquence without the Buddha's sustaining power,
the ignorant and simple-minded will also show their eloquence. But the latter do not. Why? Because of the sustaining power on the one hand and its absence on the other. Where the Tathagatas enter with their sustaining power, there will be music not only in various musical instruments and vessels but also even in grass, shrubs, trees, and mountains, Mahamati, yes, in towns indeed, palaces, houses, and royal abodes. How much more those endowed with sentiency? The mute, blind, and deaf will be cured of their deficiencies, Mahamati, and will enjoy their emancipation. Such, Mahamati, is the great extraordinary virtue of the sustaining power imparted by the Tathagatas. Further, Mahamati said,
Why is it,
Blessed One,
that when the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are established in the Samadhis and Samapattis,
and when they are baptized at the most exalted stage, the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, bestow their sustaining power on them? Replied the Blessed One, it is in order to make them avoid the evil ones, karma,
and passions, to keep them away from the jhana and stage of the Sravakahood, to have them realize the stage of Tathagatahood, and to make them grow in the truth and experience already attained.
For this reason, Mahamati, the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones sustain with their power the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas. If they were not thus sustained,
Mahamati, they would fall into the way of thinking and feeling as cherished by the wrong philosophers, Sravakas, or evil ones, and would not attain the highest enlightenment. For this reason, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are upheld by the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones.
Thus it is said. 165. The sustaining power is purified by the Buddha's vows. In the baptism, samadhis, etc. From the 1st to the 10th stage, the Bodhisattvas are in the embrace of the Buddhas. 41. At that time again Mahamati the Bodhisattva said thus to the Blessed One. The chain of origination as told by the Blessed One depends on a cause producing an effect, and that it is not a theory established on the principle of a self-originating substance. The philosophers also proclaim a causal origination when they say that all things rise conditioned by a supreme spirit, Isvara, a personal soul, time, or atom. How is it that the rise of all things is explained by the Blessed One in another terminology bearing on causation but in its meaning not different? Blessed One. The philosophers explain birth from being and non-being. While, according to the Blessed One, all things coming into existence from nothingness pass away by causation, one that is to say, the Blessed One has ignorance from which there rises mental conformation until we reach old age and death. This teaching as explained by the Blessed One is the doctrine of no causation and not that of causation. According to the Blessed One, too, that being so, this is.
If this is simultaneous conditionality and not successive mutuality, it is not right.
There, Blessed One, the philosophers' teaching excels, and not thine. Why? The cause assumed by the philosophers is not dependent upon the chain of origination and produces effects. But, Blessed One, thy cause has reference to its effect and the effect to its cause, and thus there is an interconnection of causal links, and from this mutuality follows the fault of non-finality. When people talk about, that being so, this is. There is a state of causelessness. 1. This is according to the Chinese translations. In the Sanskrit text there is apparently an omission. 2. The Tianj reading seems to give the best sense. Replied the Blessed One. Not so, Mahamati, mine is not a causeless theory of causation which results in an endless interconnection of causes and conditions. I speak of that being so. This is because of my seeing into the nature of the external world, which is nothing but self-mind, and because of its unreality of grasped and grasping.